start because our time is very limited tonight. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rina.
Thank you.
Good evening, Rina. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, I'm so happy to see there's quite a few more people here tonight, and I think you're going to enjoy it quite a lot. And I hope everybody had a very great and wonderful weekend, and we can take this tonight maybe. I'm just giving a little warning. We might go a little bit beyond 7 o'clock, but I have to finish this one. The slide is the same slide as we did last week. It is just from page, which page am I on? 26. There's in total 43 pages, but this is more under the common law, so we are not going to spend that much time on each topic. Is there any questions that you want to ask about last week's slides and the contracts? If there's no questions, then I take it as everything is fine.
I'm okay, Rina.
Okay, thanks, Alex. The 72-hour clause, that is normally for any contract that can be cancelled, but most of the time it is for the under 250,000 Rand properties. The reason why there is a 72-hour clause, it is under the common law actually, and also under the new Consumer Protection Act. Sometimes you do get compulsive buyers and you pass a shopping center and there's an extremely good estate agent who's selling developments, properties on the developments, and very convincing, and before you know, you sign the OTP and everything is settled and done. Based on that, it is a direct marketing thing. Then you can cancel a contract because you can claim as if you were intimidated by the estate agent. It's a difference if you call the estate agent, go and view the property, and then make the offer to purchase. So it also depends on what is the situation. Contingency protection. If owners want to buy a property but have a home of their own to sell first, you can make an offer to purchase subject to the fact that you sell your property, and you can actually put a minimum offer price in it, and you say exactly how much of that your proceeds are you going to put into this purchase of your second property. And it's all conditionally that all the deals must go through. It's a very dangerous transaction because maybe you are number 4 on the line of a subject to, and number 1 doesn't go through, then all of it is like a not monopoly. What is this? Little things that you pack, but it's really a snowball effect. So you prefer not to sign an OTP like that. This is also again with the 72 hours. Sorry, I don't know why it's in there again. It may be wise to require the buyer to acknowledge receipt of the 72-hour notice on a copy of this notice. The buyer should also indicate the day and time of receipt. The seller should then retain the copy as proof of notice. This is when you give the notice. Also, when you purchase the property, and if it's on a display like in a shopping center, then there is some differences in the OTP where you state exactly it's a direct marketing. This is just as well, if the first buyer cannot commit to the offer to purchase for some reason, the second contract becomes binding, and then the seller. This is when you sell your property, and we actually call it also a backdoor clause, where you say to estate agent number 1, I'm not going to take my property out of the market. I'm going to carry on marketing my property, and I'm going to accept an offer to purchase. Now, by law, you are not allowed to accept a second offer to purchase. So in your second offer to purchase, there must be a definite clause to say that there is another transaction, and if that transaction does not go through, then this one becomes immediately valid. And then also, number one must know that there is another OTP, because then the seller cannot give extension of time on the first OTP. Did I make that one clear?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then the activity clause. Your client has signed an OTP but has received another offer from someone else. How would you advise your client?
Rina, sorry.
Yes, Kabela, are you?
My mind is just trying to understand. Go back to the last slide. So, with regards now to what you are saying, that a client can sign an offer to purchase subject to another event taking place. Am I correct in saying, for example, for them to be able to buy this property, they first want to sell theirs?
Yeah, it's the previous one.
Yes, that one. So for the seller to be able to enter into such a contract, must now the buyer have an OTP for his property that is trying to sell?
Yeah, I'm going to explain that. I've got a very nice contract that lays that whole situation out for you. So I think you will understand it very clearly there. Is to say, yeah. So this is, I'm just going to mention what can be in the contract, and then we're going to take, it's a very thick contract. Actually, I don't really like to use it, but it covers everything. Okay, so we are happy with this. And you understand, you hear that the owner can sell, but it must be in that first contract to say that he's not taking the property out of the market. So purchaser number one must be aware that the property is not going out of the market and the owner can accept any option. Remember, anything that happens must be stated into the contract. Okay, we will come back to the 72-hour clause activity. Financial products and providers, developers and property owners, no matter where in the world they operate, will have to finance their projects using equity finance, debt finance, or a mixture of both. We therefore need to examine in detail the different types of finance available. The financing of a property is, as we all know, ultimately a derivative of the net income flows it is expected to produce. The perceived quality of that income will therefore influence property financials. It will influence the amount of money they will make available, the price and the terms of the loan. What is meant by quality? Well, to some degree that will depend upon financial, but assuming that he is rational, being able to invest across all markets and acquainted with modern portfolio theory. Then this means predictably its lack of variability, its security, its cheapness of management, as well as its ability to grow in real or money terms, its ability to perform in such a way that it can repay debt and or leave an equity investor with profit. The banks, we've got our four major banks, Nedbank, Standard Bank, Absa and FNB. If you are a very fortunate client, there's Investec as well. We've got your traditional home loans, we've got flexi bonds, future use and repayment choice. So there's different bonds available. What we will do is we will try to get a bond originator for Thursday to explain in detail about the different type of bonds and how bond application works. I'm not going to do this activity. We can do this activity after she's finished, because I'm not 100% sure if all these type of bonds are still available at the banks. They will tell us, because there is new regulations after COVID as well. Bond originators, We prefer to make use of a bond originator. The reason for that is they are registered with all the financial institutions. SA Home Loans is also part there. And they submit your application to all the banks at once. You in person cannot really do it, but they can. And at the end of the day, if your own bank does not support your application, support in the sense of giving you 100% bond and giving you a very good interest rate, maybe another bank can see the possibility that you are a good client and they can offer you a better rate and no deposits. And maybe they want to buy you over. That's the way we always call it, that they want to buy you over, but it's not like paying you, but they give you very good opportunities. All right, regarding this 4 major bond originators in South Africa, I think there's much more now because it's UBA, Better Bond, Better Choice, quite a few of them. Yeah. We will sort that one out for you. Also, first up, financing commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is a bit different from the ordinary loans. You also make use of your more commercial departments of the banks. And then obviously we know of out of our development field, how many other opportunities are there where you can do application for bonds. Commercial real estate financing can take on very different terms, and the way deals are structured is based on a number of factors. Anticipated use of the property, anticipated returns from the property, geography, type of real estate, size of real estate, perceived risk of to lender, market conditions, and many more. Each of these areas must be examined by the business owner prior to seek commercial real estate financing. So this comes back to the basics where you have to do your market study and make sure that all the rights and everything is on the property that's supposed to be there. And if it's an existing residential property, make sure there is the architect's plans, the plans for the properties there. It depends where it is. Sepua is also part of it. Spluma is also part of it in certain provinces. So there is quite a few that you have to take in consideration when you do this application. And we can do this application on behalf of the client. And most of the times we charge an extra fee for that. Unlike most residential real estate transaction or residentials, we don't charge any money because obviously your bond originator is going to do the work. Normally I just pass on the details of the purchaser and the bond originator takes over. The loan agreement will usually include the length of the loan, interest rate, fixed or variable, and what the loan is for: new construction, the purchase of an existing property, refinancing. So you have to actually give all the detail. Any questions up to here? Now the activity lists the documentation that your commercial client has to prepare in order to seek financial assistance from a bank or investor. Calculations: the seller, Mr. X, sells his property for 1.2 million. The agent's commission is 7.98 and is included in this amount. The seller has an outstanding amount of 350 on his mortgage. How much commission does he have to pay to the agent? Once he has paid his mortgage debt, how much cash will he have available to invest in his next property? You think you can do this calculation quickly, maybe? Is anybody close to a calculator? Because mine is now covered with screens. Or shall you do this on your own?
No, let's do it together. Just
do you have
a minute?
Yes, Rina, can we do it together? Got a calculator?
I do have. Okay, 1.2 million.
Yes.
7.98 is agent's commission.
Okay, I'll put in 1.2 million. And then
multiply by 7.98%.
how do I put it? 0.78.
7.98.
All right.
What is that amount?
9,576,000. Listen carefully.
Now you take that amount, you deduct it from 1.2, and then you deduct 350 on his mortgage.
So I take 9,576. I deduct it from
1.2. And then you deduct the 350,000.
All right.
So your question or your answer will now be what you've got now is on number 2. That is the cash that he's got available to invest. And number 1 is the commission percentage that you worked out. It's good money. Who wants to enroll as agents?
Rina, I'm not following.
1.2 million, Cavallo, multiplied
Yes.
by 7.98%.
Yes, I did that.
Okay,
And
that is your commission.
Okay, so 95760 is my commission.
Yeah.
All right. That's very good money.
Yeah, that's why I say, who's going to enroll as agents? We've got a launch at Palmat the 10th. Just think about it. And that is your commission. And once you, then you take 350 because that is the outstanding mortgage. So now you deduct the 1.2 minus 9576. I will just make it a round figure of 95 really. Or 96, 95. So make it 95. And then you deduct the 350. Alex, what is the total that you got?
754240.
Yeah, 754240. That is the money that he's got available to put down on his new purchase.
745. 754. Sorry, guys. I meant 745.
745. Okay. Yeah.
Remember, I'm getting this now. 1,200,000 times 7.98. It gives us 9,576,000. Correct.
95,000.
It's 95,000.
95,000.
95,000.
Yeah.
So it should be divided by, not times.
Oh, sorry, my. Okay.
Oh.
Eh?
If you multiply by 7.98 percentage.
Remember, percent is 0.0798. That's the percent.
Okay.
So you multiply by 0.0798.
Okay.
0.0798.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so let's make it a round figure of 95,000. So you take 1.2 minus 95. And 95 is your first answer. How much commission? It's 95,000.
Yeah.
And then the second question is you take the 1.2 minus the 95 minus 350. That gives you?
Sorry, it's 754, not 5. My mistake.
Okay, 754.
Yeah, 240.
Okay. So that's your second answer.
Yeah.
Are you all happy with that one?
Yes.
Okay, this is the case study. Also calculations. Mr. and Mrs. Z, a newlywed couple, want to buy a small cottage. They are married in terms of the antenuptial contract You qualify them jointly and ascertain the following information. He earns 20,000 Rand per month and receives an annual bonus of 20,000 Rand a month. His wife earns 15,000 Rand per month and receives a 13th check annually. They have sold their apartment for 560,000, but still need to pay the selling agent commission of 5%, which is included in the selling price. The outstanding mortgage on the apartments is 250,000 Rand. They have some money in a savings account that should cover the buying cost, that is their registration cost. The bond cancellation fee is 200,000. You will have to go and do some research to the exact amounts payable for the following costs. Bond registration fee plus VAT to the conveyancer responsible for bond registration. Now I want to test you. Who did download the Uber app?
I did.
Thank you, Alex. Now, if you can go into your Uber app and you look at your bond transfer or registration fee.
Okay, it's gonna be a bit difficult because now I'm using my phone for everything.
Okay,
Hey?
okay, I will. No, it's fine. I will quickly go in. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Let me quickly go back to this calculation. I want to explain something to you. 20,000 Rand per month, annual bonus of 20,000. 13th check is also a bonus. Okay. Bonuses does not calculate as an income normally.
Yeah.
Because a bonus is like a freebie. If your company performs well, they can pay you, but they do have the choice not to pay you this bonus or 13th check, and you can't do anything about it. So your calculation will only be on your actual earnings.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, sorry?
Rina?
Yes.
Rina?
Yes, Moses?
The 13th check, it's counted as part of the earnings of a person. It becomes part of your annual salary. So
Yeah,
it's
but
only
they can.
bonus that is not included.
But that 13th check, there's quite a few companies that took it away now, ne? Even
Yes,
if it
so
says
normally
13th
what
check.
they do, so normally what they do is if they say you earn 250 per annum, right?
Yeah.
You structure it within, so within that. So automatically, whether you like it or you can choose whether you want the 13th check or you don't. But they calculate it as part of your annual salary.
Okay, I think that will then be as per contract. Maybe they will look at it like that. If it's like what you said, obviously, yes, then it can be calculated.
Hello, Karina.
Yes.
Mr. Ramabulana, so that is dependent on the company. Usually in government, they take your annual salary and divide it by 13, and then they give you the 13th check on your birthday month. But in private, a bonus is can purely be a bonus, which is outside your annual pay. I mean your annual payroll. So it's dependent on the company's policies.
Okay. All right. Okay, then that is clear. Obviously, then we can calculate the 13th check if your contract said that is the way that they divide your salary in 13 portions. All right, they've sold their apartment for 560,000, but still need to pay the selling agent commission of 5%. And which is included in the selling price. The outstanding mortgage on the apartment is 250. They have some money. The bond cancellation fee is 200. Okay, let's see. The bond registration fee plus VAT to the conveyancer responsible for bond registration. But they don't tell us the purchase price here. Is there a purchase price? They've sold
No,
their
there is.
apartment. They have sold their apartment. So there they have to pay 5%. That gives you 28,000. And they must deduct this. Let me just put my calculator on. Kabela, do you have your calculator? Take 560,000 less 5%, or you can say 28,000.
Second, just a second.
That gives us 532,000.
Yes, less 250,000. That's their mortgage.
282,000.
And the bond calculation fee is just 200 Rand.
281,800 Rand.
So that is what they've got available. And their earnings is 20 times 12 gives you 240. Kabela, can you just calculate for us? 15,000 times 13.
All right, 15,000 times 13. It's 195,000.
So the total there is 240 plus 195.
Plus 195 is 435,000.
435,000. Now let's
Yes.
quickly go onto that Uber app. Let's assume this is the gross monthly income, 485,000. I'm just going to say 450,000.
Ability or bond transfer, bond repayment.
Yeah, there's the bond. I'm going to go back to the bond repayment now. Total monthly, because remember, this is when they purchase, so we must first get a purchase price. Gross. Okay, based on their salary, they will qualify for Sorry, I've done the wrong thing now. Affordability. Your gross income is 485. Net income, let's make it 35 for expenses. So 450. Total monthly expenses, let's say 35. That your net surplus income is then 415. You want to pay for 20 years, and it is 7%. Calculate.
Sorry, Rena, please let's go back to net monthly. What did you say is our net monthly?
Actually, I think 35 is too much for net monthly, but if you pay as you earn, I just say 35 for your net monthly.
Gross monthly. We said 435, right?
485.
485.
Sorry, it is 435. You are correct. Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry, it's my mistake. And the net monthly income is then, obviously, let's make it less. Let's say 420. Let's make it 420.
Okay.
And the monthly expenses, then they've got a car payment and what. Let's make it to 20,000. Then you're left with 400,000.
Yes.
And you've got 20 years to pay. with your interest rate at 7%, and we calculate, and it shows that they can actually have a bond of 130,500 based on their salary. Now we go back to your bond home loan calculator. We say home loan deposit, the property value, let's say they purchased the property of 500. Let's take a guess on 500. And the deposit required, we say that it's no, and the savings available, they said we've got that other amount they've got in their 400,000 there, what they can spend.
Rena, I'm a bit lost. Which option are we in? We did affordability for the first one, and now this one that we're doing, which option?
I actually went to the deposit savings, but let's do the repayment then. Purchase price. I just want, yeah, there it is. Sorry, it's the purchase price. Let's say the purchase, the second one, Alan, the second one, it's the purchase price. It's 500,000, 20 years to pay, 7% interest rate. The deposit, we say there is the deposit 400.
400K.
Yeah. So the total monthly repayment will be 775. Okay, now we look at what is the bond calculation and transfer cost. That is what they ask us there. We say the purchase price was 500K, and the loan amount now is, say, 100K. It's freehold. No, it's a natural person calculate. Now you see there your bond registration cost plus VAT. It's 5,980. Your bank charges, it's 6,037. Your deeds office fee, postage, and it's 1,200. So the total bond registration cost is 13,270. I think what we will do is I will write down his activity 43, and we can put it on the screen to do calculations a bit. And then I'll make UPA open on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be easier if UBA's open there and we can do it there.
All right.
Okay, I'm finished now with the slides for this contracts. I'm going to share the other screen with you, and this is the actual contract. I've shared the contract with you on the group, and it's also going to be uploaded on the LMS system. And I'm going to start at page number 2. Page number 2, you can actually, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
This page can be first, can be last, whatever. But this is the information the attorney and you as an agent is going to need. This is just the summary part of it. So it is the purchaser, the ID registration number, that is on Annexure A. Then you get purchaser number 2. Also on Annexure A, we will go through all the annexures, marital status, married or unmarried. Now, it's good to have this up front in your contract, because then you know exactly, do they have to sign together or not. Then you get your seller's details, you get your property description, you get your purchase price, your registration date, occupational rent, property leased to a third party. This helps you as the agent and also the attorney to manage the contract properly and with the dates when has it been suspensive conditions and clauses and like that. So as we said that in a contract you need the parties. There you have purchaser. It's marked for you for purchaser, name, and the ID or registration number. If your purchaser is a company, you put the name of the company there and the registration number. And then you must say duly authorized there to being, and then you put the name of the person who has the power of attorney or the resolution to sign on behalf of the company. So it's either or, either the personal details and or the company details. This is the estate agent, and as you know, all our agents needs to be registered to sign an OTP. There you say who is the agent, the name of the agency, and there's the agent with the agent's FFC number, the registration number from the Estate Agents Affairs Board, and the company name, the company registration number, and the company FFC number. Seller 1, exactly the same details, where the same as the purchaser. Either it's a company with a company registration, and then you say who is representing the company, and or the resolution. And the resolution or power of attorney must be attached to this contract. And there you've got your property description. If it's a sectional title, obviously you must say the unit number. You've got the unit number, you get a door number together with a garage, a carport, or a parking number. So anything that is connected to this unit must be completed here, including an undivided share in the common property if you have undivided shares. And this is known as, for in case Wild Olive, and then the street address of the sex unit, of the development. Or it's a full title, you've got a portion, you've got an earth number, you've got a suburb, and then you get the street address exactly where it is situated. Purchase price. You put the total amount there. If it is a development land and if there's VAT payable, then you must complete this as well. The seller confirms that he or she or the entity represented herein is registered for VAT and that the property is a supply in terms of the Value Added Tax Act. The purchase price therefore includes VAT. The seller will pay VAT to SARS. Or the transfer duty, or you can take out there and say does not exclude VAT. So it all depends on what is the mandate and the arrangement with the seller. And then both the seller and the purchaser initials there. Also, this is important for the attorneys to know, is it transfer duty they have to charge or is it VAT that they have to charge? Please, and you must stop me for any questions in between if you want to. Not sure? Approval of a mortgage bond. This offer is subject to, people, and please, a mortgage bond, you do not sign any OTPs if it doesn't say where you apply for your loan or your mortgage bond that it is a suspensive condition. Now, subject to is suspensive. Because if the bank does not give you the money, then you cannot forfeit any deposits or any monies paid. There's no claims that anybody can raise against you. So you must say it's a suspensive condition, and it's also regulated by the Credit Act, and also you are covered in the Consumer Protection Act, and you must put the amount in numbers and in words, and you can state the date of the time on which this mortgage bond must be approved. And you as a purchaser undertakes to apply for the loan immediately after acceptance of this offer. And also this agent can actually, on your behalf, do your application. Although with the National Credit Act, We cannot anymore do the application on your behalf, but we can appoint a bond originator to assist you in this application process. If it happens that you do not do this, the agents and the attorneys can turn around and they can put a claim against you. You are obliged to do that.
Rina,
Yes.
in your suspensive conditions, you say that we can put a date and a time. If, for example, the bank tells you or has told you that by Friday, the 31st of September, before 6 p.m., we will call you to tell you whether the bond has been approved or not, and you put in that detail in the suspensive conditions, and by 6 p.m. on Friday, the 31st of September, the bank has not called you, what happens then?
What you do is normally you do have that letter from the bank to say that yes, they will call you, and now they haven't called you. It's better to have all the communication in writing to cover you up with this. And then you just forward that to the estate agent and to the attorney and say that it has not been declined yet. But unfortunately, we need a little bit more time. But that is also why if you sign this offer to purchase, you say there it's like 30 days from the last signature. Because then you know you're more or less in time.
Could the agent turn around and say, because we didn't get your call, or
No, you did apply, so you did what you were supposed to do. The fact that the bank does not approve it timelessly, that's out of your hands. Nobody can make a claim against you.
All right.
Did that answer your question, Alex?
Yes, it does.
Why do I get the feeling I'm not audible all the time? Or
No, you are audible, Rina.
is it? Okay, Alex, can you still hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Rina.
Okay. I didn't get your answer. Did you say you're happy?
Yes, I am happy. I just wanted to find out if the agent could cancel this agreement, because there might still be hope for you to get the bond, but business is always done within working days, Monday to Friday. So could you tell the agent, like, give me until next week to hear from the bank?
No, you can do so. Let's get to the suspensive condition, then you can see there's another wording in there as well that covers you up.
Okay, cool.
Notwithstanding the provisions of clause 16.2, we will go to this loan. This is exactly that clause that I said we're going to go to. The purchaser loan is not approved before the loan fulfillment date in clause 2.1. The seller will have the right to postpone the fulfillment date unilaterally by giving written notice to the purchaser before such fulfillment date. You must remember, sometimes it's good to put a deposit down, because once you put a deposit down, the court sees it as if your intention, you do have an intention to purchase. So then they have to put you on breach. If there's no deposit, then maybe if there's another offer on the table, and there can be a dispute, but maybe they can then cancel. So sometimes it's better, if you see you've got a problem, it's good to maybe just put a small deposit down. If the purchaser qualifies for lesser loan than required, but wishes to proceed with the transaction, he has the right to waive the relevant suspensive condition unilaterally, in full or in part, by giving written notice to the seller before such fulfillment date. It will then be deemed that the purchaser has fulfilled this suspensive condition. The shortfall is immediately upon demand due and payable as an additional deposit to the transferring attorney. We did that in a transaction where we actually fight upside down on price. It was on property that was in distress and in liquidation. They pushed us up, the trustees, to an offer of 1.85 million, and there was another offer that was, our offer was third on 1.85. Our initial offer was 900,000. So I advised my purchaser to put in that offer, because I know there's no ways that that property can reach value. It was totally stripped. There was no electricity, there was no baths, there was no sewer system anymore. They broke out all the pipes, most of the ceilings, and if we can just get a valuator there, but instead of us paying the valuator, we relied on the bank's valuation. So after big stories, the bank came back and they say, no, they are only prepared, and yes, my client has 600,000 Rand deposit. So I said to him, we are not going to declare any money now. We go in with 100% bond. So they came back and they say, no, they are only prepared to give us 1.5 million in 100% bond. And then I turn around and say, yes, but our offer now is 1.85%. How can you say you are prepared to give 100% on 1.5, but our offer is 1.85? Then you have to reduce your selling price. So they reduced the selling price to 1.5, and when we received the final offer to say that they approved the bond, my client turned around and went to the bond attorneys and say he doesn't want the 1.5, he's going to put 600,000 Rand down, so he will only take up 900,000. So it's in your rights to change those clauses or the conditions and put the deposits down at that time. So if you are not happy with a property in the sense of the valuation and you think the selling price are too high, just go in first with 100% bond and see what is the outcome. Because sometimes instead of fighting upfront, you can, just stick to your point at the end of the day. Because then, remember, if a seller is harder for selling and the bank comes back and decline based on the value but gives you another price, then you've got it in your hands that you in person qualify. It is the property that didn't qualify, and then the seller can make his pick. Is he going to take you, yes or no, because it's then close to registration actually. So that's just a small trick of the trade. The purchaser consents that the agent or his nominated bond originator may apply for the loan approval on his behalf. This is also halfway true, because I'm not allowed to sign on behalf of a purchaser any documentation in the fact that a credit check can be done on him, and he's got his banking details, bank accounts, statements and everything, and he must supply it himself. So you can be behind him with the originator, but you cannot really do it in the sense that they say you can apply on his behalf. If the purchaser has refused to give his or her cooperation, alternatively frustrates the loan approval even after written notice requesting the contrary, the seller is obliged, upon request of the bank's valuator, to give and to ensure immediate access to evaluate the property. Should the seller refuse to neglect to ensure access to a valuator, even after written request thereto, the loan fulfillment date, as stipulated in clause 2.1, will be extended with 3 working days after each such written request has not complied with. And this is according to the Consumer Protection Act. Now this helps a lot with the calculation, whereas you say that the initial deposit or full purchase price will be paid on this exact date, and this will be the amount. A further deposit, that is it, your bank guarantees from the bank, and if it's from an investment, or payment from a subject to transaction, means that if you're selling your own property or another property to purchase with this one, gives you this total amount, delivered bank guarantees gives you this total amount, and if you calculate all these together, this is your total purchase price. Occupation.
Rina,
Yes, Kabela.
if you can just go back to the previous page. So I think at this point, the question that I was asking, I was seeking clarity in terms of exactly this. That for one to be able to include this in the contract, as in, I'm waiting for this property first to sell, then I'll buy this one. Must the seller have an offer to purchase of their property they are trying to sell or not?
No, it's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
Because, no, normally on a transaction like that, we will then give, because this will be then a second offer, we give you 45 days for finance approval. So we give you 45 days on the suspensive condition instead of the 30 days.
So the 45 days is to make sure that your old property sells as well.
Yeah. You can go to 60 days, depends on how hard up your seller is in your income, your assistance. Instance, sorry. But I'll show you, there's a form, there's one of the addendums is going to cover that question for you. This is just a calculation. How much money are you going to put down from that proceeds of the subject institutions? Occupation. I always say, yeah, I never commit to a specific date, although they make provision for it. I always say on date of registration. Because it happens so many times when you give access prior to registration. If the purchaser moves into the house and all of a sudden he doesn't like the color of the kitchen, or he doesn't like the color of the bathroom. Now they start with nitty-gritty things on this is wrong, and there's no registration, they moved in, and at the end of the day they don't pay their occupational rent, and then you sit with a story where you have to evict them. So I normally say on date of registration, I only give access after guarantees has been delivered, means that all the documentation has been signed, everything is done. It's now a fact, either they wait for the clearance figures from the municipality or they can submit any time to the deeds office. Occupational rent, even if you put on date of registration, it's advisable that you put an amount down towards the occupational rent. The reason for that is, if you do this clause automatically becomes like a rental agreement. If it happens that this purchaser moved into the property and now he doesn't want to move out, and he doesn't want to go ahead with the transfer or whatever the story is, then this clause come into effect, where you have to pay you a monthly rental income, and make sure that this is 1%. I always do not go low on this amount, because this is also one clause where you have forced them not to actually make use of this. If it happens that you say date of registration and they say, okay, they're going to move in 2 weeks prior, then I renegotiate this amount, but not before then. Are you all happy up to here?
Yes.
I think there was a question, Alex, I wasn't sure if it was you, on fixtures and fittings. This property is sold together with all fixtures of a permanent nature, which forms a unit with the property. The seller guarantees it is paid in full, that he or she or the entity represented herein is the owner thereof, and it is in good working order. These items include, but are not limited to, the following items. Plants not in pots, means that is the plants that has been planted, your cycads, all those. Your stove. Sometimes your stove is a loose stove. It's not a fixture stove. It doesn't matter. In Gauteng, stoves must stay into the apartment. Air conditioning. Fitted TV or Mnet aerials or satellite dish. This is always a story on these dishes, because your dish has got 2 points. Number one, you've got your plate that is mounted against the wall, but then it's got a loose arm where your dish is on. So you have to make sure, and I always write separately here, the dish is staying, or the uh, the the plate that is mounted to the wall, that is going to stay, so that your purchaser knows exactly what is going to stay and what is going to go. Your alarm system, or they like to take out alarm systems, permits, keys, remote controls, intercom, gas bottles, swimming pool cleaning equipment, including automatic appliances, swimming pool net, blinds, security gates if applicable, as well as, and then you can add on here, and make sure that you write it please in full. The following fittings.
Rina?
Yes, Alex?
Sorry, just a question for my own interest. If I, as the seller, I mounted the TV to the wall, if I know that I'm going to sell maybe in 3 months' time, and I don't want my TV to stay there, I can unmount it from the wall, right? Or does it have to go because it's mounted?
No, you can unmount it, but then you have to fix the holes and you have to paint.
Okay, so what stays is basically what happens when you put the house on a listing and then you put it up for sale, then whatever is in the house that is mounted, is that what goes?
That's true. You will see we've got an addendum also to cover this, what is going to go and what's going to stay. You can also even keep it there up to date of for the new buyers, and then you're going to say, the following fittings and items are specifically excluded from the sale and will be removed by the seller. So there you can explain. You're going to take off your TV and you're going to fix the wall.
Okay.
Okay, miscellaneous financial matters, mortgage bonds. The seller confirms that the mortgage loan, as stipulated in Annexure B, are paid up to date and undertakes to keep it paid up until date of transfer. So the seller must keep on paying his bond. Now this is, remember we spoke about the municipality accounts. I know that there was also a story on this one. The seller instructs the transferring attorney to obtain a clearance certificate on the property. The seller will be liable for rates and taxes until registration of the property. People, please, this must be in all your contracts. Print this thing out, mark it in red. If you ever sign a contract on your own, make sure it's there. Because if it says that the seller will be liable for all rates and taxes until registration of the property, and keep a copy of this contract, no municipality can ever cut your electricity or demand any payment from the previous or from your seller that was outstanding from him, from you. It covers you on this one. The seller shall, upon request, pay the application fee as well as an estimated amount for future property taxes and utilities to the transferring attorney to enable them to obtain the clearance certificate. Levies, Homeowners Association and Sectional Title Body Corporate, the seller confirms that all levies are paid up to date and in full. The seller is liable for the payment of any levy clearance certificates as well as any levies and any charges until the date of registration. It is the same scenario as with the municipality. You don't want to land up in 2-3 years and they say, oh, we've done a miscalculation, now you are liable for it. In the event of a sectional title property, the purchaser will become liable for any special levy and levies for the reserve fund from date of registration, which the purchaser confirms he or she is aware of if applicable. Now this is a very important thing. If you sell any property that's a sectional title property, please make sure that you do get a copy of the body corporate invoice or the Homeowners Association invoice so that you can see exactly as an agent what has been charged. If there's a special levy, the seller is only liable for that special levy up to date of transfer. You will be able as a purchaser to pay from date of transfer into your name for any special levies or anything else. The purchaser must, on request by the conveyancer, pay an estimated amount for future levies. The amount that the purchaser is liable for after registration until date of expiry of the body corporate or homeowners association clearance will reflect as a credit on the body corporate or homeowners association's account. The purchaser is liable for any buy-in levy which may be charged by the body corporate or homeowners association if applicable. This is not really a standard thing that they charge. All amounts are payable to the transferring attorney on demand. Shortfall on mortgage bonds, municipality accounts or levy accounts, the seller confirms that the purchase price is sufficient to settle any bonds in full after the deduction of the commission. If any amounts are due for arrears on bonds, municipality accounts and or levy accounts, the seller shall, within 7 working days after being requested in writing by the transferring attorney, pay the shortfall into the bond, municipal account or levy account, or make the necessary financial arrangements for the registration of the transaction to be effected. This can also happen otherwise. Say, for instance, we are busy selling a bank repo property. I'm thinking now of Standard Bank's help you sell properties. And this seller is really in big trouble. And he's prepared to take a lower bond offer to purchase than the bond. Maybe he purchased too high and he didn't add value to the property, so he cannot sell for that high. And your economy has changed, so yes, he must just get rid of the property. Then with the approval from the bank might accept that offer, and then when the transfer attorney comes, he must sign a debt contract, a document to the transferring attorney, say yes, he is prepared to pay that shortfall in X amount per month. So that can also happen. SARS, the parties are aware that SARS performs a risk analysis on both the seller and the purchaser before issuing the transfer duty receipt, transfer duty exemption relevant to the property transaction. The seller and purchaser guarantee that all tax-related matters, private or otherwise, including but not limited to tax returns and payments, are in order. If this is not the case, the relevant party undertakes to bring it up to date immediately. Both parties confirm that they have income tax numbers, and if not, they will immediately apply at SARS. And I can assure you that SARS, especially if you are a seller and you are outstanding on your tax, if SARS picks it up, they will just instruct the attorney, the first payment will be to SARS for the amount that they think you are outstanding. Or they will not be able to register if that's not the case. Transfer. It is the seller's right to appoint the transferring attorney. The transferring attorney is irrevocably instructed and authorized to proceed with and effect the transfer of the property as soon as reasonably possible after all suspensive conditions in this agreement have been fulfilled. The parties will immediately on request sign all documentation necessary to effect transfer of the property and or bond registration or bond cancellation. Cost. The purchaser will immediately on request after the suspensive conditions are fulfilled pay the transfer and bond cost and all associated expenses such as professional fees, transfer duty and deeds office fees, etc. to the transfer and or bond attorney. The purchaser confirms that he or she is aware of the extent of the cost and has made provision for it. The seller is responsible for the cancellation cost of any existing mortgage bonds, if applicable, and authorizes the transferring attorney to recover such amount from the proceeds of the transfer. Any questions here? Up to here. Information, the FICA, that is that first addendum, Annexure A, Annexure B, and it's personal information according to the Property Act. We will go through that annexures, then you will see what's in there. Risk, defects, and footsteps restrictions on the property. Ownership, as well as the risk of damage to the property associated therewith, together with all benefits and responsibility for all levies in the event of a sectional title property, including all special levies and or levies for the reserve fund. Property rights and or other expenses with regard to the property will pass to the purchaser on date of registration. That means that the seller stays liable for the property and must still keep on paying his insurance on the building and the property up to date of transfer. Because if anything happens to the property prior transfer, he will be the person who's being liable. The seller is obliged to insure the property up to date. This is now exactly what I said, sorry. Defects and footsteps. Also, we're going to have another addendum talking about the patent and latent defects. Patent defects to the property are those defects which can be seen with the naked eye and or can be established after a reasonable inspection of the property by the purchaser. The purchaser has a legal obligation to conduct a thorough inspection of the property before making the offer to determine the presence of patent defects to the property. There is an irrefutable presumption that the purchaser is satisfied with the condition of the property with regard to any patent defects, including zoning and building codes, on the property on date of the signature of this agreement. In the event that the purchaser neglects to attend to the necessary inspection, it is presumed that the purchaser is aware of all the patent defects and that he or she purchases the property as such. The purchaser confirms that he or she is aware of all aspects pertaining to invasive species and purchases the property as it stands with all vegetation. Latent is hidden effects. Hidden defects to the property are those defects. Yes.
Sorry, I find that the above statement is a bit contradicting, because when you sign this contract, right, you haven't started living in that house. Let's say for example, because here they say that they give you a reasonable amount of time to identify those patent defects, but at the bottom they say that the purchaser confirms that he or she is aware of all aspects pertaining da. So meaning as soon as you put your signature down, you agree that I've seen everything. Is that what it means?
That is more or less what it means, but if you can still prove that the owner was supposed to know, although you've done a thorough inspection, maybe they've put cupboards against the wall and you could see the water defects. You thought it was like a built-in cupboard, and when you move in there's no cupboard or shelves, and all of a sudden there is this water damage, then it means that they deliberately hide it away from you. You cannot now go in and pull away all the covers and stuff like that. What I've done, this specific sentence, I've crossed it out many times. You can cross it out, and you can, I won't say refuse to sign it, but you cross it out and then you sign it.
So by crossing out, what are you replacing it with? Especially
don't replace it with. No, you don't. You start crossing out from here. Patent defects to the property are those defects which can be seen with a naked eye or can be established after a reasonable inspection of the property by the purchaser. Okay. And then, you cross out this. If you're not happy with something, but most of the time I'm doing the last sentence. And I will show you on the addendum why I'm saying.
So this reasonable time, must it be stated here on the contract to say, is it 30 days or what's reasonable?
7 days. According to law, 7 days. Yeah.
7 days after registration or after occupation?
No, after signature of this contract.
Yeah. That's a difficult one.
Because
when you sign this contract, you haven't taken occupation of that property. As such, you will not know that the geyser is leaking.
Yeah, but you can remember, if the geyser is leaking, that's what we said. The owner was supposed to know.
Okay.
If you can prove the owner was supposed to know anything, then if they were hiding things away from you. Like what I said in my son's house. They were hiding things away deliberately. And they've signed this contract. They didn't have a leg to stand on. So latent defects is the defects, those which cannot, patent defects which can be seen. Ne? Latent defects is the defects you can't see. And that is the annexure. You will see what we're going to do under the annexure as soon as we come back there. The seller confirms with signature hereof that the property is not sold in the normal course of business. As a result, the guarantee against patent and latent defects as contained in the Consumer Protection Act are not at the disposal of the purchaser, meaning if it's a business, then it's something different. If it's an ordinary property, then it falls under the Protection Act. The property is offered and sold foots to it as it is in the current condition, nature and extent as inspected and accepted by the purchaser, except normal wear and tear from date of this agreement to date of the transfer. You see there, on the it's offered and sold foots to it as is in the current condition, nature and extent as inspected and accepted by the purchaser. It's always advisable after you sign and after the offer has been accepted to go back to the house and do a proper inspection. The purchaser is entitled to appoint an expert and or person with technical skills and knowledge to detect defects, regularity measurements and non-compliance aspects concerning the property at his or her cost before making the offer. Sorry, even after the offer, because this still falls under that reasonable time.
So,
the agent, yes?
Apologies for always chipping in.
No, you
But
don't.
on the 8.2.4, the footstools,
Yeah.
I think a couple of weeks ago you alluded that they did away with the footstools clause, or so is that applicable?
Yeah, the footstools clause is not 100% away. They kept it there, but if you can prove, it's, you know, footstools in the old days means you buy what you see what you buy. I think footstools is more applicable to say cars and things like that. In real estate, they keep the footstools clause in the contracts. Be honest, I don't know why, but. You cannot, if the footstools clause is in there, and maybe the owner didn't say he's going to take out the swimming pool pump, then you can take him up for that, because that is part of the swimming pool. Even if it's footstools, he can't say, but now you bought it footstools. You saw it with the pump working. And if there's no pump, he was supposed to put it for you on that condition. There's no pump, it's excluded, he's going to take it with. And then it was your right to say, yes, I accept it or I don't accept it. So they keep it in there. And I actually don't know how to say it, why, but they rather go back to the latent and patent defects.
Okay, so one more
sorry,
this.
Can I just say one? Keep this one, because you're asking very good questions actually. It's the footstools. I think it rather comes in where they use it on the servitudes, where nobody can do anything about a servitude. If there's a servitude and you're not allowed to build on a servitude or a main municipality line in your property, it's out of anybody's hands. Then you have to accept it as it is.
Okay, so I've seen a couple of properties where agents would say this is a great investment property, it just needs some tender loving care and everything like that. So with that, are they simply stating that this is footstools, or you buy it with whatever you can see, so don't come back later and say the stove is not working? Because upfront on the adverts, they'll say that it needs a little bit of TLC, then it can become a great investment opportunity and that.
Yes, that is most likely on those properties. I've got one. a similar one in Pretoria North. I can tell you, if you start talking about latent and patent defects, I don't know which list will be the longest, because there's cracks, there's on the walls. Uh, the there's no ways that it can pass the COC certificate. Uh, the stove is half not working, and the tiles are out, and the bath is cracked. So, there I just say I need a cash buyer, and it needs TLC, and it's a great investment opportunity. What else can you say? But it's not going to pass any financial institution.
Oh, okay. So now,
be careful for the cash buying. Any ads with cash buy, and it's not that you have to say that. I'm saying it. We're looking for a cash buyer.
okay. All right.
You happy with that one?
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay. The agent does not have any duty to inspect the property and or regularity measures for and on behalf of the purchaser, and shall not be liable in any way for any latent or patent defects to the property, and shall not be liable for any damage the purchaser may suffer as a result of such deficiency. And this is very important. As an agent, never get involved in any of these matters, because then you are liable. So you give the documentation, you've got your mandate, give everything to the purchaser, tell the purchaser up front, this is the information I have, and that's it. Don't get involved by saying, let's go and use your engineer or whoever the agent wants to use to help the purchaser do the inspections. No, you must get his own people. You can maybe give a name and telephone number and say, call them themselves. They must make their own arrangements. Don't make those arrangements on their behalf. What you can do is call the seller and say, can we, the buyer and his whoever, architect comes in and do measurements. And you can accompany them. That's not a problem. But do not do that arrangements on their behalf. And that is in the Consumer Protection Act, where you take then the responsibility. The seller must ensure that the property, garden and pool, if applicable, is maintained in the same condition from date of signature until date of occupation. The purchaser must maintain the property, garden and pool, if applicable, in the same condition from date of occupation until date of registration. It's the same. If he doesn't now water the garden, and the garden is like, it's going to cost you about 20,000 rand to fix the garden, you can claim, because that was not what you see, and he was deliberately neglected it. Restrictions on the property. The property is sold subject to all the terms, conditions and servitudes in the current or previous relevant title deeds of the property, which title deed or schedule of conditions in the case of sectional title are available for public inspection at the relevant deeds office. The property is sold subject to all limitations in the township establishment conditions, amongst other zoning applicable to the property. And please, especially you that also wants to do developments, try to get hold of the title deed. There was a transaction on my table, or a property listing, and luckily the title deed was there. And when you read the title deed, it says that you can only build a property within the 2 perimeters of your boundary wall. That means you can only go and do residential 1. You cannot do residential 3 or 4. Doesn't matter what anybody else tells you. Your title deed is your first contract, and then comes your approvals and other documentation. Homeowners Association and body corporate rules. This is also important, and this is the reason why you must add this as an addendum, a copy of the Homeowners Association and body corporate rules, because It will tell you the purchaser is obliged to establish if the property is subject to the management and conduct rules of the body corporate in the sectional title scheme or homeowners association. The purchaser must familiarize himself with these rules and undertakes to become a member of such homeowners association or body corporate where applicable. The rules are available on request. Now, people, the thing is, in the rules, it states clearly that there is a levy to be paid. And let the purchaser sign those rules and regulations, because then he cannot turn around later on and say, oh, but I didn't know about I have to pay a levy, or I didn't know that I will be liable for special levies. There was a court case where the court ruled against the estate agent, saying that the estate agent was neglected and this purchaser did not know there was a levy to be paid. For us, it's common knowledge. But sometimes purchasers can take you up. And you know what? That agent is going to pay for life. I think it was 500 or 600 rand at that time. I don't know what's the levy now. The court rules against the estate agent and instruct that the estate agent will be liable for that levy until the date that seller sells his property. Commission. Okay, this is just the parties confirm that the agent or agency is the only effective and decisive cause of this transaction, and then the agent's commission is annexed to C. Breach of and jurisdiction. Now, breach is if any party fails to remedy any breach of the terms hereof within 7 days. Now, in developments, we try to push this to 14 days. If you are a purchaser for developments, but 7 working days is also sufficient if it's a residential property from date of receiving a notice requesting him or her or the entity represented herein to rectify such breach. The non-defaulting party shall be entitled in his or her sole discretion and without any prejudice to any of his or her rights to do the following. Say, for instance, the purchaser didn't comply to the request where the transferring attorney asked them to come and sign the documents. And he's dragging. Then they can put him on terms and they can cancel the agreement. But I can assure you that if you are a purchaser, you don't go this route at all, because you will land up, if the bond was approved and everything is approved, the bank's attorney will definitely be against you for the bond attorney for their cost, and you have to pay for the cost for the bank for the valuation. There's a big traumatic account that's going to wait for you. To ensure the agreement and to claim specific performance, including payment and full balance of the purchase price and all other amounts owing in terms hereof, and to claim in conjunction with the rights contained in 10.1.1 and 10.1.2 damages from the defaulting party, to claim interest from the party who continues to delay registration, with the understanding that the non-defaulting party must first instruct the transferring attorney to place the defaulting party on terms in 10.1 to remedy such breach. The interest is calculated on the full purchase price at 5.5% per annum above the repo rate as determined from time to time as from date of expiration of the aforementioned notice period until the date at which the breach is remedied. Now, there is a common law clause, what they call the Mora clause, that is also under this, is that it depends who is the defaulting party, and that defaulting party can pay an interest. I used that Mora quite a few times already in contracts. If the purchase in breach of contract in deposit or any amount, including the transfer duty, paid to the seller or transferring attorney, less agent's commission, transfer and bond attorney fees may be claimed and kept by the seller as a rouwkoop. So that is the other, if you put a deposit down and you decide not to carry on, then they can take your deposit. That is the only time that they can take it. The parties hereby consent to the jurisdiction of the magistrates court, which court shall have jurisdiction over the parties. Okay, that's normal thing. Any cost order obtained by any party, including the agency for the collection of the state agent commission against any other party, will be calculated on an attorney and own client scale. Domicile and notices. We are actually fortunate we don't make use of this post email mailing anymore. It's either delivered by hand and or fax email. We only use emails actually. And also don't think if you receive an email you can ignore it. The moment you open that email, the attorneys gets a notification that you've opened it, so they know you did read it. Certificate of Compliance, Health and Safety Act, you get your electrical certificate of compliance. It's the COC, this is the standard one, we all know about this one. And also electrical installation. Remember, if you go through a house and you're an estate agent, you look for any plugs. If there's a plug in, you tell the seller, please, when your electrician comes out, you unplug anything that's not part of your main installation. Gas certificate, if there's a gas stove, you must know that there is a gas stove certificate needed. If there's an electrical fence, you need an electrical fence compliance certificate. Tenant occupying the property. Seller confirms that the property is not leased to a tenant, you scratch out the one that's not relevant, or the seller confirms that the property is leased to a tenant, and then you do Annexure G. Cooling off clause, the cooling off clause of 250,000 Rand, or the 72 days if it's direct marketing, and then you have to give it all in writing. Corporate measures only applicable if either party is a legal entity or a trust. Now, I will show you about the resolution, the liability and surety. The person who signs this OTP is also a co-principal debtor, jointly and severely, for the property fulfillment. Presentations of documents, all the documents, the company documentation, everything must be there. Compliance, signature. This agreement is not inconsistent of any section of the Companies Act, and this agreement is not in conflict with any of the objectives. All necessary steps has been taken. Pre-incorporated agreements, there's another annexure. We're going to go through all the annexures now. General terms, the agreement constitutes the sole and entire agreement between the parties. No warranties, representation, or other terms and conditions of whatsoever nature made by the agent, seller, or purchaser shall be of force or effect unless contained or recorded herein, and or in an addendum or annexure signed by both parties. Means you can't just call each other and make a verbal agreement. That a verbal agreement is not valid. No variation, addition, or deletion of the terms and conditions of this agreement, its annexures or addendums, including the clause, shall have any force or effect unless it is reduced to writing, is confirmed via email or fax. No failure, omission, waiver, or relaxation of any of the provisions of this agreement, nor any failure by a party to enforce the provisions of this agreement due to any breach, shall operate as a legal defense against any party. If multiple sellers or buyers are party to this agreement, they are jointly and severely liable for the fulfillment of the obligations. Purchaser and seller confirm that they have read this agreement and understand the contents hereof. This agreement is a pro forma agreement with blank spaces. Don't leave blank spaces in any agreement. If any of the blank spaces, including witnesses, are left open at the conclusion hereof, it will not have the effect that this agreement is null and void or voidable. So meaning if there is a blank space, the contract still stays a contract. But please don't leave blank spaces. Rather say not applicable or something, but don't leave it blank. All references to singular will also include the plural and vice versa. Any reference here to days refers to working days, except if legislation dictates otherwise. Any term or stipulation in this agreement which is void or unenforceable shall be limited to such clause of the agreement and is regarded as not part of this agreement. This contract and any annexures or addendums thereto may be executed in counterparts, each of which shall be deemed an original, and all of which together shall constitute one and the same document concluded on the latest date that both parties have signed. All clauses in this deed of sale containing the purchaser's obligations will be effective as from date of signature. And this is one clause that everybody likes to keep open. People, if you keep this clause open, the problem here is if the seller accept another OTP and that OTP doesn't come off, he can still sign this one. This thing is then valid forever. So you have to put a closing date, an irrevocable date in. This offer is irrevocable until this time and date, and is binding upon acceptance irrespective of notification of acceptance to the purchaser or not. Any counter offer by the seller will be regarded as non-acceptance of this offer and is a new offer made to the purchaser, which is open 48 hours for acceptance by the purchaser after it was made. Now this is just the annexures that is in the contract, the information of the purchaser, information of the seller, your commission agreement, sale of purchaser's current property, occupation prior to after registration, limitation of the seller's liability of defects, property leased to a third party, your resolution rectification for the purchaser, resolution or rectification for the seller, pre-incorporated agreements, additional blank annexure for needed. Any other conditions that your seller wants you or the purchaser wants you to put in here, maybe the seller didn't say anything about the SICATs, now you put in here 19.1, the SICATs is going to stay, and 19.2, the TV dish is going to stay. So you put in what is still needed. And then both parties sign, the purchaser, your seller, and here it shows to you by law, the agent acceptance is negotiated. You must say who is the agent, you must say the agency's number, the agency's registration number, and the agent's sign here. And then if this agreement is completed by an intern agent, such intern agent is duly assisted by the undermentioned qualified agent. So there will be the intern agent's details, and here's the qualified state agent's details with your Fidelity Fund number. Transferring attorney, who's going to be your transferring attorney, who's going to be your bond attorney, and who's going to be your bond originator. Yes.
The agent, does it have to be a principal agent or just any registered agent?
Okay. Your intern agent is one that is still not a full title, full status agent. That agent can sign here, and then your full status agent must sign here. Like for in case if you now register as an agent, I'm the full status agent, I'm assisting you in this contract, then your details will come in on top and mine will come in at the bottom. And I must also confirm that the seller knows everything about this transaction. What I normally do is when we sit down with this, you will call me, you will take the clients out, you will do everything, and then you will call me and say, now we're going to sign the OTP. I'm meeting you with your client somewhere. We go through, I ask them, are they happy, what, and then I call the seller and say, have you been there? Is he happy that we signed the OTP? And so I must confirm. Preferably, they want us to be with, but it's not law that we have to be with you, as long as I'm with you to sign the OTP. Does that answer you, Cabela? But you have to be a registered agent, either intern or full status. Okay, this is then Annexure EA, the information for the purchaser. Everything is on there. Trust name, registration number, and you will see their marriage status, how are they married, and somewhere was the tax was also, yeah, somewhere. There's the tax number. If it's that number, then it's up there. So all the information for the purchaser is there. There's all the information for the seller is there. And you see there's all the bank's name, the clear. Oh yeah, another thing that I have to say to you, if you go on a mandate and you list the property, you must advise your seller to inform his bank, because otherwise he's going to be up for penalties. He must advise his bank normally 90 days prior to registration that his intention is to sell the property. And they like finding the people on that. This is now your commission. This is the seller's details that comes in there. The property description confirms the agent's name, the agency's name, also the registration. What is the total commission? And then the commission, how will it get split? Maybe there's an agreement between estate agency companies. You must remember the commission gets split between the agencies, not the agents, and then individual inside the agency. The agents will then get their agreed percentage of commission. And this document can only be signed by the seller. It does not have to be the seller and the purchaser, because the seller is the person that is going to pay you your commission. And then the signature of the agent. Now this is yours, Caballo. Sale of the purchaser's current property, subject to the sale of the purchaser's property. The purchaser herein can only make this offer, the main agreement, if it is made subject to the condition that the property that he or she currently owns is successfully sold, then remove the transaction. The main agreement is thus subject to the suspensive condition that the purchased property situated at this will be sold successfully. So it is either it has been sold in the process of transaction, or it will be sold. So you cross out what is not relevant. Whereas the property in the removed transaction has not been marked and no offer has been accepted yet, so then you will say that you will accept the offer prior to a certain date, and also suspensive condition will be on a certain date. So what I normally say to a deal like this is that he cannot sell also on the same conditions. He must sell now conditionally only bond, not again another sale of somebody else's property. Scenario 2, whereas an offer in the removed transaction has already been accepted, but the suspensive conditions there have not been yet met, all suspensive conditions in the removed transaction must be met on or before a certain date. In both scenario 1 and 2, it is agreed term that registration of the removed transaction must take place as soon as possible, but not later than 45 working days after fulfillment of the suspensive conditions. And 45 working days is 9 weeks. It's a long time. Scenario 3, whereas all suspensive conditions in the removed transaction have already been met, the parties agree that the registration of the removed transaction must take place within 45 working days of signature of this agreement. It's also advisable, if he has already signed an offer to purchase, to find out who is the transferring attorney in his transaction, and try to motivate to your seller that to use the same transferring attorney, because then it's not a hold up between all the attorneys. Delivery of guarantees payment funds from the removed transaction. The transferring attorney in the removed transaction will, on written request and in the discretion of the transferring attorney in the main agreement, make payments or deliver guarantees which should be reasonably acceptable to the seller, to the transferring attorney in the main agreement or his or her nominee, as follows: within 10 working days after such written request, within 10 working days after the written request. It's basically the same. When your fulfillment suspensive conditions has been met, everybody must go and sign. How does guarantees work? Okay, let me quickly finish this paragraph. The purchaser hereby authorizes the transferring attorney in the main agreement, should they deem it necessary, to give instruction to the transferring attorney in the removed transaction to link the main agreement and the removed transaction in the deeds office, various deeds offices, for simultaneous registration. So the one goes with the other, so they will register on the same date. Now, how does guarantees work? I really, if you want to know if another agent doesn't know how the process works, this is the first question that they come up with. as if they ask you, when are your purchaser going to issue guarantee? The purchasers cannot issue guarantee. How does guarantee work? Is that you as a purchaser go and sign at the transferring attorney. The seller goes and sign at the transferring attorney. The purchaser also sign at the bond attorney. Once all the registration documentation has been signed, then the transferring attorney requesting the bond attorney for a guarantee that that money or undertaking, that money will be paid over on date of transfer. And as soon as they receive that letter which the bond attorney gives to the transferring attorney count as a guarantee. Only after receiving that letter, the registration attorney can issue guarantees to whoever, the municipality or whoever is needed. So that is how it works. So it's an action between two attorneys. It's not an action that you as a purchaser must now go to the bank and beg them for guarantees. It doesn't work that way. As the seller is willing to accept this offer subject to certain conditions, the parties now agree as follows. Continuation of marketing. That's what I said. The seller shall be entitled to continue to market the property. This shall come to an end once written notice has been given to him or her by the transferring attorney in the main agreement, indicating that all the suspensive conditions in the removed transaction have been met. Acceptance of competing offers. If the seller receives a competing offer within the time frame as provided in clause 3 above, he or she may accept the competing offer, which acceptance must be subject to the cancellation of the main agreement. If he doesn't put that in, he can be kept liable for defamation. A competing offer is defined as an offer made in good faith, which is the net price is equal or higher than the offer in the main agreement and can only be subject to a subject to transaction if all suspensive conditions in such subject to transaction are already fulfilled on date of acceptance of the competing offer. Meaning that if that purchaser who makes the offer as a property that is sold, that property must be already, they must have signed all the documentation, bonds has been approved, there's nothing outstanding except of maybe the deeds office registration. Then only he can go and accept it. If it is also subject to a bond, the bond due date in such competing offer is a date prior to the bond due date in the main agreement, meaning that they must actually be able to purchase the property before the first agreement can go through. Notification of acceptance of a competing offer. Should the seller accept a competing offer, he or she may give written notice to the purchaser or agent or transferring attorney in the main agreement of acceptance of such offer. Such notice must be accompanied by a copy of the competing offer. That makes sure that the seller does not just make up a story and try to get out of a transaction. Obligation of the purchaser upon receipt of notice. Upon receipt of written notice as per clause 5 above, the purchaser can ensure that the transferring attorney in the removed transaction certifies to the transferring attorney in the main agreement within 7 working days that all suspensive conditions in the removed transaction have been fulfilled timely and in full. It will be deemed that the suspensive conditions in the main agreement are fulfilled on the date of receipt of such letter. Within 7 working days in writing, waive the condition that the main agreement is subject to the removed transaction. If the main is subject to a mortgage bond, it will only be deemed that the condition in clause 6.2 above has been waived if the financial institution consents within the above mentioned 7 working days to remove any condition which impede the bond registration. If the purchaser's bond has not been granted, the purchaser must ensure that he or she receives a final grant within the above mentioned 7 working days. This final grant may not contain any further suspense subject to conditions. Should the purchaser not comply with 6.1 or 6.2 above, it will be deemed that the suspensive condition in this annexure has not been fulfilled and that the main agreement has been cancelled. Alternatively, that it is not possible for the purchaser to fulfill the suspensive condition and that will continue with the competing offer. And then it's just the signatures again. Any questions? Everybody is so quiet. Okay, Annexure E, then on the registration. Since the parties agreed in terms of Clause 4 of the main agreement that the purchaser will take occupation of the property on the date as set out below. Alternatively, the parties now on a later date that the main agreement agree that the purchaser will take occupation of property on a date out below. And there you put on the date that you're going to occupy. Attorney has confirmed to the agent and seller that the occupational rent is paid monthly in advance and is cleared by the transferring. All the conditions related to the deposits and guarantees are fulfilled. All conditions relating to the transfer, including transfer duty and bond registration paid, is secured. All transfer and bond documentation. Now, this is exactly what I said. You make sure that everything is what we call done before you give approval to any occupation. Also there, again, you state the amount, or it can differ now from the one that is in the contract. From the date of occupation or registration, whichever occurs first, the purchaser takes responsibility for the payment of all utilities such as sanitation, water and electricity consumption. If the purchaser occupies the property before registration, he or she will open the utility account in his or her name at the municipality before occupation. The transferring attorney will to do this, you need a letter from the transferring attorney because otherwise the municipality will not allow you to open that account. The transferring attorney will apportion the utility bill on a pro rata basis as soon as the utility bill is received from the seller. And if it happens that you are a seller of the property, remember, you have to get money. The attorney is paying 6 months in advance for you. That is according to the laws of the municipality, and this money only gets paid to the transferring attorney, and the attorney must pay you that money back, so you must all mind. If transfer of the property does not take place within 6 months after fulfillment of all suspensive conditions hereby due to any breach of the purchaser despite written notice and request to end such avert delay in terms of clause 10 in the main agreement, the occupational rent will be increased amount equal to 5% of the purchase price in addition. Now this 5%, 5%, I always make it 1% because you want to force to purchase the property. The purchaser will then also be liable for all features and levies on the property until registration. The parties agree that there is no lease agreement between them and therefore no rights nor obligations as created in the Rental Housing Act. If occupation is given prior to transfer, purchasers shall not make any alterations or additions to the property notice and consent of the seller. Seller occupies the property after registration. The same applies, that he will then pay rent to the purchaser. And that is that. Signatures. Now this is the one for the defects, Camilla. We're going to do this one now. Limitation of the seller's liability for defects, objective and introduction. The agency is endeavored to be compliant with its ethical code and its obligations in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. The CPA grants certain rights, guarantees and protective measures to a limited category of consumers. The purchaser will only be liable to rely on the protection of the CPA if the property is sold by someone who trades in property in the normal course of his or her business, developer, speculator, etc. In transactions where the seller sells the property on an ad hoc basis, the purchaser will not have any rights in terms of the CPA. This document must be read in conjunction with Clause 8 of the main agreement. Now, this addendum, it's advisable that you tell your seller what it is, read it to them, but the seller must complete it himself, not you. And the reason for that is that if he didn't tell all the details, he cannot say, but you know, the agent completed it, was not me. So it must be in his handwriting, not in your handwriting. The purchaser has legal obligation to conduct a thorough inspection of the property before making an offer to establish if there are any patent defects to the property. This document must not be interpreted to be a substitute for any inspections which the purchaser is obliged to perform in respect of patent defects. The seller is not obliged to repair any patent defects, save for those defects agreed upon in the agreement of sale, and the purchaser cannot claim any damages or claim a reduction in the purchase price for any patent defects after the offer has been accepted. Patent defects to the property are those defects which can be seen with the naked eye or can be established after a reasonable inspection of the property by the purchaser. The purchaser is also obliged to familiarize him or herself with the zoning and existence and correctness of the approved plans of the property at the local municipality. Latent defects, the seller has legal and contractual obligation to disclose latent defects to the purchaser. The purpose of this document is to record the latent defects the seller or his nominee is aware of in writing. Latent defects to the property are those defects which cannot be seen with the naked eye or cannot be established after reasonable inspection of the property by the purchaser, and that would or could significantly impair or impact upon the health or safety of any future occupants of the property, or that, if not repaired and or removed and or replaced, would or could significantly shorten and adversely affect the expected normal lifespan of the property. Right to advise or inspections. The purchaser is entitled to... Yes.
Just a second, I'm noticing something here. So the patent defects, right?
Yeah.
It says it's the purchaser's obligation.
That is what you can see. Remember, you have to define. It's one part is what you can see, the other part is what you cannot see.
Yes. So I'm saying for what you can see, so the seller does not have a checklist where they can tick. I can see
No,
that.
yeah.
Okay.
We're getting this is part of the checklist.
Thank you.
Okay. Right to advise or inspections. Just repeat it again because I think it's because to make sure there's no misunderstanding of it. The legal status of this document forms part of a concerted effort by the agent and the agency to comply with the CPA. The estate agent's responsibility. There is no legal, contractual or ethical duty on the agent or agency, and the agent also did not create the impression that a thorough inspection of the property will be concluded. Disclosure by a person other than the seller. If the seller has not resided in the property for the past 2 years and is subsequently not in a position to make a full disclosure relating to the latent defects, he or she hereby give permission to the tenant to disclose any latent defects. So if it's a rented property, the tenant can also do it. So there is the seller's details, you put it in. There is the property details, the seller declaration to say, and the seller hereby declares that he is the owner of a property for the past how many years and resided in it since then, or the nominee hereby declares that he has leased the property for the past so many years. Now here it comes. I'm aware of defects to the roof, yes or no, or not applicable. Electrical system, I'm aware of defects of the plumbing system. So you see here, he's answering yes or no. If there's plumbing problems and he answers here, he doesn't know, there is no, then it's wrong because he was supposed to know. I'm aware of the heating and or air conditioning systems, including air filters and humidifiers. I'm aware of defects of the septic system or other sanitary disposal systems. I'm aware of defects to the property and or in the basement or foundations of the property, including cracks, seepage and bulges. Other such defects include, but are not limited to flooding, dampness or wet walls, and unsafe concentrations of mold or defects in drain tiling or sump pumps. I'm aware of structural defects of the property. I'm aware that remodeling or refurbishment has affected the structure of the property. I'm aware of any listed invasive species of vegetation on the property. Seller only. I'm aware of boundary line disputes. Even if the tenant completes that part, the seller must still complete this part. I'm aware that any additions and or improvements made to and or any erections made on the property have been done or were made only after the required consents and or permissions and permits to do so were properly obtained. I'm aware that the structure of the property has been designed as historic building. I'm aware of the authoritative issues such as building sectional total plan approvals or zoning which have not been complied with. I'm aware of defects in gas installation. I'm aware of defects in electrical fence. So you see there, he must tick off. And then he comes here and you say additional things. Is there cycads? Is there flowers? What is still going under that yes? And decides that if the property is part of the CPA and there is such. Kabbalah, does it answer a little bit of your question?
Yes, it does. So I think the follow-up question is, now that the seller has declared that he's aware, what does that mean? It means now you negotiate on this because they are aware and they're not willing to fix.
Yeah, it's aware. And then me as an agent, I'm always asking, say for instance, there's defects on the roof. We say yes. Then I put here, but the seller will fix. Or the seller is not going to fix. So explain a little bit. Ask him to write it there. Explain a little bit. And you can also go there, additional information. You can say, yes, there's a roof leak, but he's not going to fix it. Then everybody knows where they stand. And it's better to have this addendum available when you sign the OTP, so that your purchaser knows exactly what he's signing for. Okay, property leased to a third party. Remember that even if you sell the property and there's a tenant in it, if that tenant has got a 1-year lease, then they have to honor that lease end out, the purchaser. You cannot just chase tenants away. And this one is the person will take over the lease agreement on transfer, or the transfer will be delayed until the termination of the lease agreement, or the lease agreement has been duly amended by way of an addendum to expedite the expiry date thereof. Any questions on that one? Then you get your resolution if it's passed by directors, members of trust, or company, a close corporation trust. Now, if there's 3 or 4 sellers or even more, just get this resolution. If you are your own company and you buy on your own name, believe it or not, you must still give yourself a resolution. The attorneys will ask for it. So you write out this resolution. To whom do you give authorization? To yourself or to somebody else? And this is the directors of the trust. Put their details on there. This is one document. They sign only this one, and then you can sign on all the pages. Pre-incorporated agreements. If the signatory hereby acts as the representative for a company to be formed, the signatory shall be personally liable should the company to be formed not fulfill the obligations in terms of this agreement. By signing this agreement, the representative binds him or herself as surety and co-principal debtor conjointly and severally for the proper fulfillment of the jurisdiction to be formed of all its obligation. After conclusion of this agreement, the to be formed entity must be incorporated within 40 working days of acceptance hereof, and the to be formed entity must ratify this agreement within 10 working days from date of incorporation. Should the representative fail to comply with clause 2, the said representative shall become the purchaser in his or her personal capacity and shall be obliged to take transfer into his, her, or her own name. Now that's for the purchaser, and then you also get the one for the seller. You can just put it for the seller, and then this set of contracts makes you provision for a blank addendum. If anything else happens or you want to ask for extension, you put in your signatories, is it the address of the property, and then also you say what you want to say. Maybe it takes longer for the bond to be approved, then you can just say your bond approval date is moving on with so many days. And then your mortgage loan shortfall, that is if there's a shortfall approval for the bond, how much and how are they going to pay it. And that's it for the contract. Any questions on the contract?
I'm all right. The contractor side, it's very extensive, very interesting as well. Just got to familiarize yourself with all the terms and the different sections, but it's good.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of using this contract. Unfortunately, I cannot give permission that you can use it as is, for the reason that it is actually our MLS contract, and it was drawn up for the all the companies that belong to MLS. But I was thinking it is very complete and it addresses everything in the contract that we want to know, and that's
Yes.
very important.
Definitely covers a
Now,
whole
I
lot
know
of things.
it's already 12 minutes after 7, but I really quickly want to go through this due diligence clause, and it's very important for you as developers to make sure that this is my own clause. That's why I've taken it out of the contract. You can use it as is. It's open. So if you do, let's quickly, if we can do it, we can just 5 or 10 minutes, then we finish. Your other conditions of purchase, you can put this in addendum. You can ask the agent to add it onto your contract. The seller has agreed to sell and the purchaser has agreed to purchase the seller's property with the condition that the property has been approved by the local municipality and or zoned for residential 3 and or 4, or as the zoning certificate. Due diligence, the purchaser shall conduct a due diligence of the property development within 14 working days. We're going to change this now to 21 working days. But 14 working days is also close than 3 weeks. And if you have all the information at hand, you can actually do it in 2 days. It's not a big thing. The date of last signature of this agreement of sale to satisfy in its sole and unfettered discretion or inter alia the future viability of the development property, and if all information received are still valid, and unless the purchaser shall within the aforesaid period have given notice in writing to the seller to the effect that it has to satisfy itself, then this condition shall not have been fulfilled, and this agreement shall ab infinitu be of no force and effect. This says, in short, that you as the purchaser must give the seller notice to say, I'm satisfied with the due diligence, I'm going ahead, or I'm not satisfied with the due diligence because it's overpriced for this and this and this reason, it came out of the due diligence, so we renegotiate. So you can use this as an option for renegotiation as well. It depends on the information you can gather. The seller acknowledges that the suspensive condition referred to in clause 22.2.1 above is stipulated for the benefit of the purchaser alone and may therefore be waived by the purchaser, and accordingly the purchaser may at any time prior to the fulfillment of the suspensive condition advise the seller by notice in writing that he waives the benefit of the condition. On signature of this agreement, the seller shall assist the purchaser and make the land available for due diligence. The seller shall also immediately make available to the purchaser copies of all lease agreements, copies of all documents constituting or relating to any security or suretyship, copies of title deeds, plans, rates and tax certificates, and other contracts and documentation relating to the zoning or property or development, financials of the property or development if applicable, proof of all deposits held by the seller in terms of any lease agreements, all documentation regarding zoning rights, all documentation of relevant approvals received regarding the application of rezoning, any inventory list of all assets if applicable, tax clearance certificates. The purchaser or his appointed professional employees or his agent shall with immediate effect be entitled to enter upon the property for the purpose of the due diligence investigation, subject to the fulfillment or waiver of suspensive conditions. The seller sells to the purchaser who purchased the property, excluding the liabilities and accounts receivable. People, please, this one is so important. You have to put this in, that even if it's the only thing you put in, you have to put this in, because especially when you purchase the company, okay, because luckily there your attorney might help you, and but I always put this in. I can't emphasize how important it is to say that you don't take over any liabilities or accounts removal. And also the other thing, this clause, the seller shall pay all professional and municipality costs relating to the final approval zoning of the property. Remember that once you receive the seller receives the approval for rezoning, from that day, even if there's no bulk service agreements or whatever, it's like they give you a loan. They will, the calculator say you are supposed to pay on that date, say 500,000. Now it's 8% per year interest on that money, and then you've only got an approval document, not even a zoning certificate. So the seller started the process. He's selling as if it's development land. Then he is liable for all those costs. Don't get yourself involved there. I got a property the other day. We were very much in love with the property, just to land up 15 million for outstanding municipality costs because of this. There's no ways that property can sell. The seller shall be liable and pay all bulk contributions to the local municipality. So this is the most important clauses in this contract, if it's development land. And that's my story for tonight. Any questions?
Hi.
Yes, Kabela.
On those addendums, I did not see a checklist for the purchaser, for the patent defects. How does one go through to check this and that, or you just write freehand?
You write freehand.
All right.
Because that checklist, the purchaser must also sign. So what I do is, I did it, is when he wants to make the offer to purchase, with the offer to purchase, I give him the checklist and I say, this is what the seller says he's going to leave or take out. Are you satisfied with the paperwork? If he's satisfied with the paperwork, I said, okay, then tomorrow night I make another appointment and we go through that checklist inside that property. So if there's a roof leak, we go in that property, we look where is the roof leak, show us where's the roof leak, make our own decision, and if you're not satisfied, then he can bring in a qualified person. Any other questions? Kabela, are you satisfied?
Yes, I'm satisfied, Rina. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just on the bulk contributions. So the last clause 22.4, you say that the seller shall be liable and pay all bulk contributions to the local municipality. So meaning this is applicable up until the date of transfer.
Yeah. Remember, this is for the development land, Kabela, ne?
Yes.
And this is your due diligence thing. And there we say that you purchase zoned land, res 3 or 4. You cannot have zoning unless this is paid.
So remember, let's say for example the zoning was done 5 or 6 years ago and you have the residential zoning 3 or 4. Then what happens from that 6 years ago till today? Are there any bulk contributions that must be made, or bulk contributions are made prior zoning?
It is prior zoning, and the municipality can maybe decide, because they didn't pay for the rates and taxes, that there's a raise and taxes account. But to come back to your development in Cullinan, I've spoken to another town planner and another lawyer, and because you've got zoning already, it means that your previous seller, or the seller that you purchased from, paid the bulk contributions.
Okay.
And that is why we have to get that file, because if we can prove that the bulk contributions have been paid, because you cannot ask the seller now for that receipt anymore, or if we can just get the town planner that was involved at that time to get the proof of this,
okay,
then you can, the municipality is liable to give you that water. They can then make an arrangement with whoever else to get water from you. But at that time, they did receive the money as if they're going to give you your contribution.
Okay, thank you for that clarity.
Any questions? Alex, you happy? You quiet?
No. Yes, Rina, I'm good. All this is very informative. In the process of educating myself, I have come across some of these things, so it's good to relearn and hear this again. I'm good. I'm covered.
And Dr. Mabuda?
Oh yes, Rina, thanks. I just wanted to check one thing. If something is installed on a contract and it hasn't expired, does the seller, this buyer, automatically takes over, or it has to be an agreement that would you take over this, and if the seller is not, the purchaser is not interested, for example, an alarm system that may be on a contract in the house, or something like that installed.
Say for instance, there's an IDT alarm system.
Yes.
Number one, the seller is not allowed to take it out. And you as a purchaser are not forced to take over the contract.
Yes.
Because if there's still a contract between the seller and IDT, for in case, maybe the seller owes IDT money, that alarm system belongs to IDT, not to the seller.
Okay, now let's say they say to put an alarm system, you pay 150 Rand a month, but over a 3-year period, which means that should you sell the house on the second year, you are liable to cover the costs for the remainder year.
That will be an agreement between you and IDT. It's nothing to do with the purchaser and IDT. The purchaser are not forced to take over any contracts, any liability contracts.
So it means the purchaser can decide to say, I don't want the contract, and the seller will see how the contract is sorted with the company.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Somebody else with questions? Dimakatsu?
No, Rina, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, then thank you for your time, and sorry that we went over, but I think it was very important that we complete this contracting. And any questions, you're welcome to ask me for it, but I think we covered quite a lot on the contracts. And I did give you that lengthy contract for an example. And yes, as I say, there's due diligence clauses. You can change as you wish. You can use it as it is. It doesn't matter. But that contract, as an example, is the MLS contract, but it's very complete. So then we can just say good night for tonight. And thank you for your time, and have a blessed evening. And we see each other tomorrow evening. Moses will present tomorrow evening, and we all look forward to that.
Thank you very much, Rina.
Thank you, Rina.
Okay.